It is August 2019, and Officer Michael Thomas is preparing to distribute breakfast at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York. Thomas approaches cell 220 with a tray and comes upon a horrifying scene. Jeffrey Epstein, the most high-profile inmate in the jail, is hanging from an improvised rope attached to his bunk bed. Chaos erupts in the prison. A female officer runs to her desk to call 911, but it is useless. Epstein has been cold and without a pulse for several hours. What happens next is the most absurd chain of deception and contradictions in history. Officers alter and contaminate the crime scene. The government releases a security video with missing minutes, and in part of it, a person wearing orange clothing is seen going directly up to Jeffrey Epstein's cell in the middle of the night. These are the secrets and lies that occurred in the deadly cell of Jeffrey Epstein. 13 hours before the discovery, Jeffrey Epstein is captured on camera being escorted by a guard to his cell. The prison staff prepares for the nightly lockdown, and on their desk there is a note with an important task they must complete that night: conduct mandatory rounds every 30 minutes to check on Epstein. This monitoring is required because Epstein is under surveillance after attempting to take his own life days earlier. For hours, officers are seen getting up to use the bathroom, browsing the internet, and even taking naps at their desk. The guard do everything except check Epstein's cell. At 10:38 p.m., Officer Toba Noel is captured getting up from her desk and leaving the room completely empty. At that moment, no one is watching the floor. 1 minute later, the camera captures an orange-colored figure going up the stairs that lead directly to Epstein's cell. The camera angle does not reveal who it is, but it is clear the person is wearing the same orange color as prison inmates. Remember, at this hour all inmates are locked in their cells until the next day, without exception. At 11:57 p.m., a person is seen approaching the main desk. It is guard Michael Thomas, arriving for his night shift. But at this exact point, the security cameras cut out and the video jumps to midnight. To understand what happened during that missing minute and who the orange-clad figure was, we must jump forward in time and explain how the cell was found on the day of Epstein's death. It is 9:30 a.m., and 3 hours have passed since Jeffrey Epstein's death. The first to arrive are the forensic photography team. The first thing they do is take a photo of the hallway where Epstein's cell is located. But the team does an extremely poor job. The agents not only forget to place evidence markers on the fabric scraps on the floor, but they do not even capture Epstein's cell in the photo. The image shows a functioning security camera that records everyone entering and leaving Epstein's cell. Unfortunately, the hard drive that recorded the footage had broken a week earlier, during the very week of his death. The team then takes a photo of Epstein's cell door. On the floor, a power outlet can be seen that Epstein used to connect a machine to treat sleep apnea. The door has a paper with Epstein's mugshot, and above it the identification of Efrain Reyes, the cellmate assigned to Epstein to prevent him from harming himself. The problem is that Reyes was transferred just hours before Epstein's death, and officers never assigned a new cellmate, leaving Epstein alone in the perfect scenario for something bad to happen. The next photo shows the inside of the cell, where increasingly suspicious objects appear. On the floor are 6 sheets scattered everywhere, even though prison rules allow only 1 sheet per inmate. On the table there is a pen, and under the bunk bed there is a large suitcase. None of this should be present in a suicide watch cell. The agents then photograph the spot where Epstein was found hanging. The bunk bed has a piece of fabric tied to one corner, and 2 mattresses are stacked on the floor. None of this makes sense. Prison officials stated that Epstein was found hanging 2 centimeters above the floor, but these photos prove that would be physically impossible. Epstein was 6 feet tall and would have been sitting on the mattresses rather than hanging, as the official version claims. On the table, they find a note written by Epstein before his death. It reads, "Davies locked me in a shower for an hour. Noel sent me burnt food. I have giant bugs crawling on my hands. None of this is fun." It is unclear who Davies is, but Noel is undoubtedly Toba Noel, the officer in charge the night of his death. On the back of the note is the last name Reyes, belonging to his former cellmate, and next to it is the phone number of someone named Juan Felix. Investigators discover that Juan Felix is a relative of Efrain Reyes, whom Epstein paid money for protection to avoid being tortured by other inmates. The cell is full of irregularities, but what happens next is one of the most negligent mistakes in forensic photography history. The team begins moving and reorganizing the crime scene. 1 mattress that was on the floor is now placed on the bunk bed. The pair of socks that appeared far away in the first photo now appear at the entrance of Epstein's cell. One of the fabric knots found in the cell is taken to another room with a different floor to be photographed. From that moment on, the crime scene is officially contaminated. More concerning still, according to the photo metadata, all these movements occurred at 9:34 a.m., 6 hours before the FBI arrived at the prison to conduct the official investigation. In other words, the FBI based its investigation on a completely altered and rearranged crime scene. When federal agents arrive, things become even more inexplicable. They interview inmates in the cell across the hall, who claim they saw guards performing CPR on Epstein when he was found hanging. But this statement is completely false, because the first photo taken at 9:34 a.m. shows that the window of those inmate cell was covered with construction paper, making it technically impossible for them to see what happened in Epstein's cell. Before addressing the government's explanations for these contradictions, it is necessary to understand the incident Epstein had with bodybuilder Nicholas Tartaglione inside the prison. 18 days before his death, Epstein was found unconscious with injuries to his neck in his cell. According to Tartaglione, Epstein had attempted to take his own life while Tartaglione was sleeping. However, Epstein told his lawyer a completely different story. He said Tartaglione began strangling him unexpectedly in the middle of the night until he lost consciousness. An important detail is that the security cameras were recording everything that night. But when the Department of Justice requested the footage, prison staff delivered the wrong files and accidentally deleted the videos showing what happened in Epstein's cell. Once again, key evidence was permanently lost due to prison negligence. Tartaglione, who was imprisoned for kidnapping and murdering 4 men, denied attacking Epstein, and the case was classified as a suicide attempt. It is July 8, 2025, and Attorney General Pam Bondi holds a press conference to explain why 1 minute of security footage is missing. Bondi claims the recording is missing 1 minute because the prison's camera system is so old that it resets every midnight and takes approximately 60 seconds to resume recording. It sounds plausible, but Bondi is probably lying. Hours after the conference, the video's metadata is analyzed, revealing that the file provided by the government was created by merging 2 different video clips and was edited multiple times using Adobe Premiere. Even worse, at 11 minutes and 34 seconds, a cursor can be seen moving on the screen, confirming it was recorded using screen capture software and is not the original unedited footage, as the government claimed. Things get even worse. On September 3, 2025, Congress republishes the prison video, this time including the missing minute that Bondi said did not exist. The minute shows nothing relevant. However, this new video has its metadata erased and significantly lower image quality than the previous one. So what is the government's explanation for the orange-clad figure going up the stairs? In 2023, the Department of Justice released a report suggesting that the orange figure could be bedsheets being distributed by Officer Toba Noel. The problem is that Noel stated that night she was collecting food trays and distributing toilet paper, not sheets. She never mentioned delivering sheets, nor is she seen doing so in the video. However, Noel made a peculiar mistake that night. She was required to conduct inmate counts every 3 hours and fill out a form afterward with the number of inmates counted. This form is mandatory every night. That night, there were 72 inmates on the floor, but on the form covering the 10 p.m. to midnight period, Toba Noel wrote 73 inmates plus 1, something she had never written before and which mysteriously coincides with the time the orange figure appears heading toward Epstein's cell. Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer believes his client did not take his own life. Days before his death, Epstein had hired him and paid several months' rent for a luxury apartment in New York so he could advise him full-time, indicating Epstein was not depressed but determined to defend himself in court. Epstein's brother also rejects the official version and hired Michael Baden, a renowned forensic pathologist who has performed thousands of autopsies. Baden found something disturbing. Epstein's hyoid bone was broken, a bone that rarely breaks in suicides but is commonly fractured in strangulation murders. He also found an injection mark on one of Epstein's arms. Although this could have occurred at the hospital, neither the FBI nor the government has explained these findings. Although I always say on this channel that I present the official and verifiable version of cases, the official version of Jeffrey Epstein's death contains so many inconsistencies and unanswered questions that it is extremely naive to accept it without questioning it. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and check out our other investigation videos of Jeffrey Epstein and more. That's all for today. You are watching Redacted Affairs. and we wish you an excellent day.